Another great topic. You must be very happy about this one.
Future leadership. You know, I got my man up there too, Senator Marshall Bullock and company. You guys take it from here. Good morning.
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. And yes, we have State Senator Marshall Bullock to my left, not politically speaking, of course, as a journalist. And then Selma Tucker, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Public Sector Consultants. Two leaders, absolutely. What number conference is this for you?
One as a senator.
Selma?
6.
Number 6.
Yeah.
So as you look around now with some conferences under your belt, there isn't a little bell, right, that goes off when a new political young leader is walking by. So how do you spot one?
Well, thankfully, they're not in their parents' basements anymore. They've graduated from that. They're walking around. They're probably a little bit shell-shocked, but they are very, very snappily dressed. They look good. Mm-hmm. But if you're really looking for the next political class, I think you've got to look for people who are really active, particularly in the nonprofit space, people who are in the advocacy space, because we're just seeing a groundswell of support from people who are sort of frustrated with the political system and are wanting to get involved, and that's why you're seeing all these candidates. And, you know, we talked about 2018 being the year of the woman. You have all these candidates who are running for office who never considered doing it before, and I think that's a wonderful testament to where the body politic is and how folks are sort of seeing themselves engaging in the democracy that we have.
Senator?
Well, I think that, as well as just us engaging. See, I think it's time for us to engage more young people, go to the schools. When I was in school, civics was a big part of our lessons every day, and so you just knew about it. I wasn't growing up to be in politics. I wanted to be an engineer, but I kind of stumbled into this. But you find people in all the odd places. You don't have to just be a political science major. Like you said, working in the nonprofit space, or, you know, just if you actively engage and plant the seeds right, folks will start to see that they belong in the process. And so you kind of cultivate that. So that's what I want to do.
Well, so let's think about our two most recent governors. You have our governor right now who really took on a young leadership role early on in terms of going right into the legislature. Governor before that, absolutely no political experience before he ran for governor. If you are talking about the next generation of political leaders, is there one path that's better to like work your way up, or do you just like jump and dive right in?
See, I like to jump and dive right in. I like the non-traditional path. Like I've never ran for office. I ran for office and won. Woo! Hey, thank you. And so that's where I'm coming from. I mean, there are folks who work in corporate America. There are folks that work in nonprofit. There's a couple teachers that are now in the Senate that never ran for office. So you can find us anywhere, but you have to show them the path. That's all I know.
Yeah, well, you see a lot of politicians now, and Rick Snyder is a really good example of that, who are taking meteoric rises and are taking risks, right? You know, they're saying, and obviously Rick Snyder is not necessarily in that millennial generation, but you do have these young people who are saying, why not?
Right.
What do I have to lose? I might as well jump in. I feel like things are not exactly working out for me. You know, national student debt has topped $1.5 trillion, and it's growing at an alarming clip every single year. And so these folks are wanting answers and are a little bit frustrated at the fact that the previous generations haven't seemed to get their handle on some of these major issues. So they're jumping in feet first, and I think you're going to see them being very, very aggressive.
And they have tools at their disposal, technology, things that, you know, folks that were in order, you had to walk, knock every single door, didn't have a van list. You had to call every single person. Now you can just touch a button. You got a cell phone that emails everybody, blast every tweet, all that.
What do you think is the impetus for this next generation wanting to be so engaged? Is it an environmental factor? What's going on?
I just think they're looking at what's going on in society today, whether you're looking at the national stage or your local stage, and they're not happy. And if you're not happy, you have to do something.
Well, and they want to see their values reflected in the leadership of their local government, in their state, at federal office. I mean, you just heard from Melissa Slotkin in this previous
Yes.
session, and she's someone who is an unorthodox candidate with a distinguished military background, and she said, I'm going to jump into this thing and I'm going to go up against a political juggernaut, and I might get bounced around and it may not work out. It worked out for her. It was quite the upset. I might get bounced around and it may not work, but she took the risk. She took the risk and she said, I'm going to do it. And guess what? She upset that apple cart, and other people see that trailblazing happening, and they're coming out in really, really high rates. So they're wanting to see themselves. They're wanting to see solutions and issues that are being talked about that are not being talked about by perhaps a political class that is focused on other things.
Yeah, I think that they're seeing more and more non-traditional folks in office. Folks are taking a chance. I mean, we brought up Rick Snyder, but there's a younger generation who's also doing the same thing, who's never held office, who just jumped in and won or put up a pretty good campaign, and so they're like, hey, we can do this. And
So what are the barriers then right now, whether it's institutional barriers that are standing in the way of someone who is ready to jump in?
well, where are they? So like, how do I know who you are? So you have to be engaging, and we also have to go and engage people, find people, because people notice things in you that you may not see in yourself. I'll use myself as an example.
Please.
I had no idea I was running for office.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. But I worked on a campaign that I believed in, and someone saw something in me and brought me into that organization, and I worked in municipal government. And then I just evolved myself and was like, hey, this time to do this.
Yeah.
Well, Senator Bullock, what he didn't say is that he was inspired, but he also had the hustle, right? He said, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that I can get there. And even if I fall short, I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. That's why you have so many people. I'll give a shout out to the Michigan Political Leaders Program. You've got these folks who are saying, I'm going to go into this, I'm going to learn, I'm going to get as trained up as I possibly can, and you're seeing I believe, pretty crushing demand from that program in particular, and leadership programs across the state. I know I was with one in my alma mater, Grand Valley State University, and you have these folks who are going into these programs wanting to get skills, wanting to get these chops so that they can apply them right away.
Yes. Future Leaders, Leadership Detroit, all of those MPL, all of those groups are the ones that folks who want to get in. But then there are folks on the peripheral who don't know about those programs, and where do they get noticed? They get noticed at work, they get noticed by another friend, they get joined by a campaign. So they have to want to get in, and we have to pull them in.
So whose job is it then, right, to find those people? I mean, you are now in state government. Is it on you to be a mentor?
Well, yes, sort of. I think so. So like, again, going back to what he said, I had the hustle, but working on the campaign, I also hustled for that campaign that I believed in. And someone on the team who had that was seasoned said, I like that guy. And so they pulled me in and was like, you should start thinking about other things in this that I hadn't even thought about. So.
Well, I think mentorship is incredibly important, and I also think that young people who might be considering this need to, and as a young person, still a millennial, and not even at the tail end of millennial, I couldn't believe this. I'm like in the middle.
I'm not a millennial.
Who are asking themselves, how do I get involved? And they are finding their own path. I think that the paths that they take are trailblazing. We're going to see these people coming from out of the woodwork, from whether they're working on their school board, whether they're working for environmental issues, whether they're working in something that is getting them motivated, and they may have found something on Facebook or Twitter. And the fact of the matter is, these platforms are so sophisticated now. What they're doing is that they are being, and we are all operating in our bubbles, but they are being inspired by the information that they see, good or bad, and they are really, really, in a lot of cases, upset, and they're fed up, and they're saying, we're going to jump in whether you like it or not, and we're going to take this thing over by storm.
And generally, it's just one issue that pisses them off, and they're like, I'm going to do something about that. And then they go into research mode. I mean, they get on a restaurant or be a cook. They're like, I'm going to find out what this problem is. I mean, auto insurance was like that for me a little bit. I had to figure it out. So, you know.
Well, and that's what's so interesting, right, in the legislature right now, how there are teachers, there are scientists, right, and folks that are coming from just different backgrounds and not necessarily, well, I majored in poli-sci, therefore I'm going to go be a future political leader.
Yeah, I think we got to look outside that bubble. But I mean, that's good that you know political science and things like that. But I think everyone is capable of doing this if they put the work in.
Well, military service is a big one too. You see a lot of folks who are running and who are winning, especially in some of those upset races. We know John James had this distinguished military career, and you have these people who are getting into this space and are saying, I was in Iraq, I was in Afghanistan, and now I'm trying to figure out how I can put my print on the policies that are sending our people overseas, that are putting our people in harm's way, and maybe they agree or maybe they disagree with those policies, but they're still motivated by something. And that's a place we've always seen people operating out of sort of that class. And we have, I think we don't have anyone left in the legislature who was from World War II, but I might have that wrong. But
in Congress,
in Congress,
DC.
yeah, I think we've pretty much lost those champions, and we're getting a new block of people who are saying, I'm going to step into this space. And so I think we've got to look at lots of different places, and it's not going to be this traditional path. And I think the parties are going to have are going to have their work cut out for them because the political class, the people who are in that traditional lane, are not getting the traction, are generally not getting the interest. I mean, you look at Barack Obama and his meteoric rise, and you look at Hillary Clinton and that energy was not there. So Donald Trump, we all know that story.
Yeah, they're looking for the new champion. So it's non-traditional paths. I didn't work I wasn't a staffer and then went on to work in someone else's staff and then became their chief of staff and then ran for office. It was like I worked on a food truck and now I think I'm gonna, go back to school and be, I got a social work degree and I'm gonna be the next city council person. And folks are taking that chance. And more young people are running for major offices out of college. And I like that.
Do you think that there is something that is better for the state, whether it is a political leader who starts out from a food truck or one that starts as a staffer? I mean, there's got to be pros and cons, right?
Somewhere along the way, after having conversations with everyone, people recognize whether you get it or don't.
Yeah.
And so if you get it, or if you got the heart and the desire and the hustle to learn all the information on both sides of the issue, people will tend to gravitate towards you. And some people just got that energy, or people just come to them.
Well, we live in a representative democracy, and the point of that is that we are supposed to have people who are representing our interests, and that means that those interests are as diverse as this country. And diversity doesn't mean a seven-figure bank account and an age that is well over the median age in the country.
I'd like to have that.
Well, working in public service, you might not get there, but when you leave, I mean, the numbers aren't so bad. But it really is. I think that so your question is, is there a good makeup? I think that the makeup needs to be representative, and that is because it wasn't representative and because it was so imbalanced. That is partly why you're seeing this groundswell that is coming up and saying, I want a more focused, I want a more perhaps aggressive stance, and it's coming sort of out of that red hot anger, and that just is not where we've seen a lot of our politicians before. They've in a lot of cases they've been groomed. We do see those meteoric rises, but these folks are coming in from really I don't want to say odd places, but untraditional places, and that is because you're going to see a much more diverse field, not just in terms of race, but also in terms of gender and perspective and places where they're coming from in the economy and their economic perspective.
And I think service was part of my DNA, but I think what really changed for me is when I became a parent. And so then I started thinking about where my kids are going to go to school, and then I was like, school suck. How do I help? Where do I need to go? How do we make this better? And those things evolved in my thought process, and so I think we can start earlier.
So in the final couple minutes that we have, the question for me and Selma, you already brought up millennial. It seems like sometimes it has become kind of a dirty word, right? And so hey, I'm one too. But for a political leader, right, who right now is listening and going like, I'm in, I want to jump in, I want to do this, do they need to identify as a millennial? Like, is that a helpful way to run, or is it just so diluted at this point to use that word?
Oh gosh, I'll answer the question as a millennial. I won't answer from a 30,000-foot perspective.
Yeah.
If I want to vote for someone, I want you to be, and this is universal, whether you are a millennial or you are a baby boomer, you want to vote for someone who has an agenda. You want to vote for someone who has a focused mission, and that's regardless of your age. And I think the millennial is going to come out in your positions, and the millennial needs to come out in your style. The millennial needs to come out in the way that you approach governing. I don't think you have to go around ringing the bell, I'm a millennial. Guess what? Everybody knows that. And I would rather rather hear you talk about the issues in a way that is going to engage not just me, but a broad swath of the electorate.
30 seconds.
Well, I
Raising
think
hand,
every
Melania.
generation who was labeled by the generation prior to them,
Yeah.
if you didn't work to their standard.
Right.
And so I don't think it's a dirty word.
Yeah.
I just think folks don't see them working at the same standard because of technology. And so, but like he said, a lot of those folks have gone on. And so now I just think you just got to work hard, and people will recognize if you're working hard and you're dedicated to something. And so it doesn't matter what your age group is.
Amen. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And future political leaders, talk to these two. Find these two guys. Thanks, everyone.